Here we go. So I'd like to welcome you all to our book launch. We're celebrating North Carolina poet Beth Copeland and her latest collection of poetry, I Ask the Mountain to Heal My Heart. And this was this is really hot off the press. It was published in July by Red Hawk Publications. My name is Rebecca Copeland, and I will be the MC for this celebration. I'm a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm also Beth's sister. And you're all invited to call me Becky, as I expect Beth will do. So it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce my sister, whom many of you already know. Beth was born in Japan, and she lived there until she was 5 years old. And afterwards, her family relocated to Wake Forest, North Carolina. Beth has also lived in India and other exotic places like Laurinburg, North Carolina, Bowling Green, Ohio, Chicago. She now lives in Creston, North Carolina, at the foot of the majestic mountain known as the Peak. Beth is a distinguished poet. Her book, Traveling Through Glass, received the 1999 Bright Hill Press Poetry Book Award. More recently, her beautifully poignant collection, Blue Honey, which is her third full-length book, received the 2017 Dogfish Head Poetry Prize and was published by Broadkill River Press. Other publications include Transcendental Telemarketer, which was published in 2012, and a chapbook, Selfie with Cherry. I don't know if any of these images are showing up. Selfie with Cherry came out in 2022 and was published by Glasslyre Press. And as I said, it's a chapbook. What's a chapbook?
A chapbook is just a small book. It's usually, less than 48 pages, between 20 and 40 usually.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And then more recently, there's her beautiful Shibori Blue, 36 Views of the Peak. This is a collection of color photographs and poems celebrating Beth's Mountain, what I call Beth's Mountain, the Peak. And this was also published by Red Hawk Publications. So I have a few questions to get us warmed up, and then Beth is going to read from her wonderful book. Um, so as this introduction demonstrates, Beth, you are an incredibly productive writer, and yet each collection that you've published stands apart and is really unique in its own right. In a recent Facebook post, you wrote, I'm grateful for my writing, a gift that has sustained me for almost as long as I've been alive. So obviously, writing is important to you, and particularly poetry. So I'm wondering if you could share with us how you discovered your love for writing, or maybe how writing discovered you.
Thanks, Becky. And, thank you so much for all the work you've done to put this book launch together. Um, I really do appreciate it. And I think you should know that she's a writer too. Becky has translated Japanese novels. She's written books about Japanese literature. And more recently, she published The Kimono Tattoo, which is a mystery novel. So, I am I am grateful for her expertise at, understanding literature and just for everything she's doing to help me with this. Getting to the question, I think I started really getting serious about writing when I was in the seventh grade. And we were living in India that year. And we were pretty isolated in the sense that, I was 12 years old when we went there, turning 13. And as a young girl of that age in traditional Indian culture, we really couldn't just go around playing with other little girls. We had to have chaperones. It was very hard to make friends. And so writing became a way for me to chronicle what was going on in my life, write about the places we went. And I kept a journal, which unfortunately got lost somewhere along the way. But, it became an outlet for me, a way to remember and also a way to sort of comfort myself because I was lonely. And and then I really got serious about poetry when I was in, I think, ninth or 10th grade, probably age 15. And there was one night when I had been reading some poetry and I wrote a very short, simple poem. And it was a rhyming one, of course, and then I was so energized by the process of writing that poem that I couldn't go to sleep, and I wrote another one, and stayed up late at night. And the next day, I took the poems to school and I showed them to my high school English teacher, Miss Ruami Squires, who was just such a wonderful, lovely, encouraging person. And she read the poems and she just looked at me and said, "You're a poet."
Oh,
And, from that moment on, that's how I have identified myself. And that's how it all started. It was exhilarating. It's not always that exhilarating now, but, I still occasionally get those goosebumps uh, when I write something.
that's so wonderful. And you've been true to your vision, right? I mean, you have, it's not always easy to claim writing or to claim yourself as a poet, and you have been true to that vision. In this collection, and I have to say, all of your collections are exquisite, but this is really my favorite so far. And you reveal a really deep connection with nature, particularly with mountains, obviously, and with the peak specifically. Um, in an earlier conversation, you told me that we have mountains in our DNA. And I'm just wondering when you began to appreciate this aspect of your biology or your heritage, and how has your relationship with mountains grown?
Okay, that's a great question. Um, by DNA, I was thinking about our biological family. Our father was raised in the mountains of West Virginia, and we would go and visit our grandparents in the mountains. And so I knew a little bit about mountain culture, through my father and other relatives. And um, our dad would come up here every chance he got,
Yeah.
he bought some land in Mountain City, Tennessee, which isn't too far from where we are right now. And he built, this very, very rustic cabin, and we would go and, hang out there at times. And I have to confess, as a young woman, I wasn't too crazy about it, because we had to use an outhouse and there was no running water, we'd have to carry water up there. And, um, you know, I was at age, 18, 19, 20. I was not interested in any of that. And now looking back, I wish I had paid more attention, because sometimes I'll hear a bird call and I'll wonder what kind of bird is that? And he would have known the answer, or I'll wonder what kind of tree is that, and he would have known the answer to that too. And so this has been a way, I think, for me to reconnect, with our parents and our grandparents, our ancestors, just being here. Our mother used to say, "Your daddy comes alive in the mountains." And I think that's true of me too. I came alive when I came here, just the air is different, the light is different. Um, so I hope that answers the
That
question.
does, and I really appreciate it. And I I'm glad that we share this DNA. Yeah. Well, speaking of coming alive in the mountains, will you read some of your poems for us?
Sure, sure. Um, I'm going to start with the very first poem in the book, and it's called True North. True North, a mountain like Polaris is a point of reference to keep us from becoming lost, a point of reverence. Around here, your GPS will send you on corkscrew curves up dead-end dirt roads, and you can't depend on maps that don't show how steep the incline is or how deep the ditch, or that the road is ruined from rain and rivers that flood, or that a fallen oak blocks both lanes, or that wheels will spin on ice and you'll have no recourse but to back down the hill, hoping you don't swerve off the shoulder. Okay, I'll take a detour here to recall my father winking at my mother and saying, soft shoulders, when he drove by a highway sign. That memory is mapped in my mind as the mountain is there, even when it's not there, hidden behind 7 veils of fog and forgetfulness, a steeple pointing to the sun, moon, and stars to remind us we're not lost. We're exactly where we are. And that one, was written fairly early when I was still kind of discovering, that I have a spiritual connection to, the land around me and that mountain in particular that I am privileged to see from my window. And it is called the Peak. People often ask me, what's the name of that mountain? And I say the Peak, and they say, well, but what is its name? And that is its name. I wish it had a more poetic name, but that's the name it has. So my book is divided into 5 different sections, and my plan here is to read, a poem from each section of the book. So the next one I'm going to read is from the second section, where I was really trying to look at the heritage of my family and, how we connect to the mountains. And I'm going to read a poem that's really about this beautiful cover, beautiful mountain on the cover. And it's called My Daughter Paints a Mountain. She wasn't thinking as her brush swept across canvas in wave-length strokes, channeling a crest she'd never seen before. While I was still in the sandhills, where there aren't any hills, just fields of cotton, soybeans, and cedar stumps in swamp water, sleeping on an air mattress in a small apartment with prints and paintings propped against walls instead of hung, newly separated, newly sober, living between the husband and home I'd left and a haven I hadn't found yet. As I drove up a steep road to see a house in the Blue Ridge, a large buck leapt in front of the car to welcome me, and I knew I'd found my new home. I didn't know the mountain seen at the top of the hill was the mountain she'd painted months before. And she didn't know I'd moved to that house with a view of the mountain she'd painted as if in a dream or fugue. How could her mountain, purple, lavender, pink, and forest green, swirled to a peak with white streak of snow against a blue sky, mirror the one framed in my window? Was it coincidence or synchronicity that the mountain in her mind's eye was more map than metaphor. It was a message from the universe. You're home. Open the door. I do believe in these signs, that we get from time to time. And, it's kind of miraculous to me that she painted something that looks so close to what I see outside my window when, I wasn't at that time even thinking of me moving to the mountains. Um, so in the third section of my book, I was writing about spirituality. And I'm reading this one because Becky is sitting right here next to me. And it was a poem that I wrote about the time we spent together. This one was written during the pandemic, and Becky was really the only person I saw in the flesh, for months at a time, except for just people that we would pass when we were grocery shopping. And we kind of had a little bubble together where she would come to my house or I would go to hers, and we would often do yoga together. Namaste. My sister unrolls her purple yoga mat in front of the sliding glass door. Durham, her German shepherd, joins us for what we call doga. Facing the mountain framed in the doorway, we rise to Tadasana, summoning the peak's steadfast stance. Durham does a downward dog on my green mat, then sinks into a modified sphinx, and we laugh and lunge into warrior one before moving to tree, balancing with one foot on the floor, the other lifted to the thigh, palms pressed in prayer, and slowly raise our arms like branches over our heads. Shooing Durham off my mat, I settle into a half lotus, smile at my sister, and say, the mountain in me honors the mountain in you. And I haven't done much yoga lately. I don't think I could get that.
My tree is tricky these days.
I think my tree would fall down, and I don't think I could get my foot on my thigh anymore standing up, but
we need Durham too.
Yeah. Durham was our helper. And then I'm going to read the title poem, and that's in the fourth section. And this was written during a time when I was finally starting to figure out, I don't have to be in a relationship to be okay. I don't have to have a partner to be okay. And, I was still questioning that, but I was definitely, on my way to doing some healing. I asked the mountain to heal my heart, but the mountain hides behind a screen of white chiffon and doesn't respond. I ask the fog, but it lifts and is gone, a ghost. I ask the ghost, but it was never here. Maybe it was a deer? I ask a deer eating muscadines from the vine, but it disappears. I ask the muscadines, but the grapes aren't wine yet and won't help me forget. I ask the seed inside the grape, but it's hard like a tiny stone, a grit. I ask a gray stone, but it has no mouth and cannot speak. Like Niobe, it weeps and weeps. I ask the tears, but they taste of salt from the ocean. I ask the ocean, but it's far away and can't hear me over the crashing waves. I ask the waves, but they speak in a rolling tongue I can't translate. I ask the tongue, but it's twisted and tide. I look up to the sky as a muscular cloud rumbles by. I ask the thunder, but all I hear is a drum roll on the day Charlie Watts died. I ask the cloud, but it shifts from a feather into a fist. I ask the feather, but it drifts away. I ask the fist, but it won't loosen its grip. I ask the rain, but how can it heal my heart when it's grieving too? I ask my heart why it's hurting, and it says, why ask? You know what to do. I open the door to my heart and step into rooms wallpapered with bloody roses. I ask the roses to heal my heart, and they say, go ask the moon. But the moon's sunlit face only smiles. So I ask the shadow side, stop asking. It whispers, bloom. So the last one I'm going to read is from the fifth section in the book. And this is one where I found a partner, you know. It wasn't until I stopped looking for one, then a partner found me, and that happens to be Paul Wetzel, who is right here on this Zoom with me. And the poem is called You Hand Me a Heart-Shaped Stone. And I'll show you, maybe you can, I don't know if you can see that well enough, but if you have a copy of the book, you know that it's written in the shape of a heart. You hand me a heart-shaped stone from the river, and I think of how your love washes over me like water. How last week you said, breathe, when I thought I'd lost my wallet at the gas station. Turn around, go back. And there it was, on the ground, next to the gas pump, with my license, credit cards, and cash. How you helped me look for my dog on the coldest night of the year and held me as we prayed he'd be found. And he was, that quirky old coonhound. How your love soothes me all the way down to my bones. How the stone is dimpled at the top with cleavage between the heart's two curves. How solid and smooth it feels in my hand. How, when I close my eyes, I can feel the vibrations of water and the warmth of your hand in mine. How I am the stone and you are the river, the giver. How you said, I will love you always. And I said, forever. So,
Thank you. Those are beautiful, and especially so when they come with your voice.
oh, thank you.
So, we've been very good with time here, and that means we have more time for questions from everybody. If some of you would like to ask questions or just make comments, we can have some give and take that way. If you want to use the raise hand function, then we can call on you like that. Or if you want to put in the chat, go ahead and send us a question. Or if you just want to unmute yourself, we can have a free for all and see who has the loudest voice and can ask a question. So right now, I guess I'll check the chat to see. Let's see. Um, Jan Bardsley asks, so you tend to like mountains wherever you travel? Do you travel to places that have mountains? That's for you.
Oh, wow. I'm not doing much traveling nowadays. I've got some health issues that make it hard for me to do that, and hence the Zoom reading. But no, I haven't traveled to a lot of
I
mountains. I
know
mean,
we were thinking we would go to Scotland and go to the,
yeah,
the Highlands of Scotland because that's kind of also in our DNA that
yeah,
we just haven't gotten there yet.
yeah. Um, I think one reason I love the mountains so much is because they're rooted, you
Mm.
know. I mean, the mountain just became my muse, and I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, you know. It's here, you know, it's here forever. And so that's what I love about mountains, I think, is just that eternal presence.
Mm.
And having this one right outside my door is enough for me. Although, you know, I love mountains. I love other mountains too, but this one is mine.
So we have another question by Maureen. Have you been writing about the recent health challenges?
Good question, Maureen. Thank you. I've written some drafts about the recent health challenges. And for those of you who may not know, I have inoperable gallbladder cancer. And I'm getting chemo to, you know, kind of keep things going as long as I can, but it's not going to go into remission. It's not the kind of cancer that does that. So I also, you know, um, so far the drafts are pretty rough, but I am writing a little bit about it. Um, but thank you for asking that.
Thank you. And your another sister of yours remarks that Miss Squires was also a poet and loved to quote poetry such as The Raven.
That is true. And she was just a really remarkable, lovely woman. And I do have a copy of her book of poetry.
Mm.
And, you know, I knew as a teenager when I was in her class, I think I knew that she wrote poetry. And so I couldn't have a better person to come out to, you know, as a poet because she was so encouraging and, you know, appreciative of the little poems I wrote.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Joy, for reminding us about that. Um, we all need a Miss Squires, indeed. Few and far between. Thanks, Nancy. So, while we wait for other questions, Beth, I have a question for you.
Okay.
The Shibori Blue, your beautiful book with I'm sorry, none of these pictures are showing up, I think, but your beautiful book with Red Hawk Publications is in a form. It's in the form of tanka or 31 syllable
Hmm.
Japanese form. And I understand that you're currently working on a collection of centos,
Hmm.
which is another really different kind of form. You tend to write in form a lot. And I think I could be wrong, but it seems like a lot of poets these days don't.
Hmm.
And so I'm kind of curious why you're attracted to form and also what's a centos?
A cento, and it's spelled Cento, Cento, cento. And it's a form that's been around since probably the 16th century. But it's created by using lines or sentences from other work. So it's kind of plagiarism. If you don't cite your sources, it would be plagiarism. And so with this form, what I'm doing is just taking, you know, the words of other people and putting them together as if I'm making a patchwork quilt or a collage. It's really can be referred to as a collage work. And I started it really because I was blocked and I couldn't figure out where to go next after I finished this manuscript. So I started, you know, just pulling lines. And the centos are going to be about mountains. The Mountain Cento series has already been published, but I'm writing also about rivers, trees, and the sky. And I'm about halfway finished with it. I'm working on trees right now. Um, and in terms of form, I started writing in form as a
Mhm.
teenager. In high school I was writing sonnets, and I would sit in study hall and write sonnets when I was supposed to be doing chemistry homework or something that bored me. And so I've always liked form, but then when I went off to college, I discovered that, oh no, we don't do that anymore. So we were doing, open verse and um, but I find myself coming back to it from time to time because I think it gives me sort of a framework. I think I sometimes do better as a writer when I put myself in a box and then try to figure out how to get out of it, because that way I have some structure to work with.
Mhm.
And it's challenging, but it can be really fun, especially if you break the rules while you're doing it and tweak it, then you can really have fun with it. So,
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense, more sense to me. Thanks for taking these challenges. And we have a question from Cesar, who asks, when you write about nature, do you feel you're in a relationship with the elements or channeling a force of nature or something else? I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but I think you made sense.
Cesar, you're making perfect sense. And I think I do both from time to time. There are a couple of poems in the book where I'm actually talking to the mountain and it's talking to me, I think it's talking to me. Um, I'm kind of being a ventriloquist dummy, I guess, with that, where we do have a relationship. There's one, where I'm actually, okay, I'll just read
Yeah.
this one. It's called Who Needs a Man When You Have a Mountain? The mountain is my strong, silent type. I'm getting good at reading his mind. When I tell him it's too late, men don't fall in love with women my age, he says, oh, stop it. You think you're over the hill? I'm 480 million years old. You're just a little bitty molehill in mountain years. My mountain is always here, flint-faced, unflinching, faithful. When I'm lonely, he says, I'm here, my darling hillock, my hummock, my mini hump. You can lean on me. He stands tall against weather and adversity, stalwart in wind, rain, and snow. My metamorphic muse, my Romeo. So, you know, I like to make the mountain talk sometimes. And, that was one occasion where I think it did. And then, to get to the other part of your question, I do feel like I'm channeling something at times as well. Um, so it just kind of depends on the situation.
Thank you. I love those dialogue poems. I love when you talk to the mountain, and especially when the mountain talks back to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You never know what the mountain's going
You
to do.
know? And it seems sometimes, I mean, in this poem, the mountain is a masculine spirit, but I think sometimes you have a mother mountain.
Yeah, there is a mountain there. I think there are a couple of poems where the mountain is more of a feminine presence. So, it's not locked in to being male. It can kind of be gender neutral.
Good. Well, we have another question that's taking us in a new direction. Jan wants to know what Selfie with Cherry is about.
Okay, well, Selfie with Cherry was very much a selfie. I mean, it was kind of a self-absorbed, I think, book. I had gone through a divorce. I was writing it when I was going through a divorce. And also, I was newly sober. So those two things were sort of a part of what was going on in my life. And I was rediscovering dating at that time and, had some pretty disastrous experiences that get woven into it. So, it's a short book and probably good that it's a short book, because I don't think I could have sustained that level of, uh, looking into myself as opposed to looking out. You know, I mean, I like that I wrote it, but I wouldn't, and I think if you've gone through something similar, it would probably resonate with you, but it is a selfie. That's what it is.
And it, as is characteristic of all of your works, it also is invested with humor.
Oh,
So yeah,
thanks. Yeah.
there's some angst, but there's also humor, and it's a good read. Thanks, Jan. And DeWitt has an offer. He will send you a collection of Chinese poems that Kenneth Rex brought translated, and that have been adapted into the Milwaukee setting. That
Wow.
sounds wonderful.
Thank you, Dee.
Yeah. How about other questions? I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself. I may have screwed it up for everybody, but if you want to just shout out a question rather than type it, we can do that too. Um,
I don't think I ever explained what a tanka was.
no,
And
should do that.
that's the poem, the form that I used in Shibori Blue. And it's very similar to a haiku, but it gives you a little bit more room, because it has 31 syllables. And so I wrote it as 5 lines. And I felt that it was appropriate because it's a book that also has photographs that I took. So, I didn't want to overpower the photographs with long poems. And it was a real easy book to write, just I would take a walk and come home with a tanka.
And those are your photographs too. It must have
Yeah,
been hard to curate. I mean, uh, your mountain is so photogenic.
yeah,
So I imagine every day you were taking photos and you only have 36.
right.
So it must have been a challenge to,
And the reason I chose 36 is because, I was trying to um, pay tribute to the Japanese artist Hokusai, who published 36 views of Fujisan. And so the book really, so I limited myself to 36 photographs. And honestly, when you're talking color photographs, I don't think there would have been a press available who would publish more than 36, because it's a pretty expensive proposition. Um, and so I had to choose a lot of photographs to choose from
mhm.
because when I moved here in 2019, that's what I would do. I'd get up every morning, take a picture at sunset, take a picture at noon, just whenever I was in the mood to take pictures, I did. And I'm definitely not a professional photographer. They were all taken with my iPhone. I've never had taken a photography class, but when that's your subject, you don't really have to be good to get a good picture.
That's true. Well, looks like we have a question from our sister Joy. Joy, what's your question
Okay,
or comment? Yeah.
yeah, I'll lower my hand down. Well, Beth, I remember one time you said you wrote a poem on an airplane, and is that right? Am I thinking?
I might have. It's not, I
Yeah, it
don't,
was when you were on one of your trips back from Chicago, I think, or something. And I wanted to ask what kind of conditions or what prompts you to think, oh, I think I'll write a poem about that. You know what I mean? You know, I'm not an author. I'm not a writer. So if those writers among you think, oh, what a
Ah,
rather,
that's a
but
great
silly
question.
question. But I just thought I'd like to know.
oh, it's not a silly question at all, Joy. I mean, I don't really know what I'm going to write until I start writing about it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just kind of like I get a line maybe that pops into my head and I just start scribbling, or, sometimes it's more deliberate than that. Sometimes I think, oh, I need to write about such and such, and I'll start. But actually, when something pops into my head, that's usually the best, because then I'm not overthinking it. I think the worst thing I do as a poet is when I overthink, and then I'm like getting in my own way, and
Yeah.
that's the hardest thing for me to do, is to stop doing that and just let the ideas come, let the energy flow, let the poem go where it wants to go, because I have a tendency to get in the way of it and say, nope, you're not going there. I'm going to take you over here, and that's usually the wrong decision. So that's kind of what the creative process is like for me. And I know for other people, it can be very different.
Mhm.
Well, it looks like Judy has a question. All your sisters are here. Judy, what?
I, I apologize. I forgot how to raise my hand on Zoom, so I'm just doing the literal hand.
Okay, it's okay. I saw you.
I'm the oldest, so I guess I am entitled to be the least technological. But yeah, Beth, I really enjoyed that this book has a narrative thread that carries all through the book. And I'm a big fan of narrative, and I think I enjoyed this book even more than your other amazing ones. And I just wondered, how did that narrative thread evolve? And at what point did you realize that you were creating a narrative thread?
Um, I didn't become aware of the thread until probably I was more than halfway done with this manuscript, because um, I was just writing about the mountain, and I didn't really see how there was any story to it other than just what it was. But as I continued to write, I started to see how it all worked together. But I did have to go through the manuscript and weed out some poems that, just didn't work with the rest of it. And that's a hard thing to do, because you might have a poem that you worked really hard on, that you're really kind of attached to, but if it doesn't work with the rest of the manuscript, then you have to get rid of it. I mean, you might be able to use it later on, but it doesn't work in that manuscript. And the last poem I wrote, I didn't think it was going to be in this book, the heart-shaped one. I was thinking, well, maybe I just need to write a whole book of heart-shaped poems, but when I got to when I was putting the manuscript together, I realized, once I got the title, I asked the mountain to heal my heart. Then I realized, well, that's a heart at the end, and it's intact, it's whole. That's what I want to end with. So um, sometimes it takes time. You just have to sit with the manuscript. I mean, there are poems in here that were written in 2019. They're not all new poems. So I think being patient is part of it, because it's not until you have a collection that you can really figure out how they dovetail with each other and fit together.
Nancy Berg is working on an anthology of translated poems, translated from Hebrew. So she's very interested in what makes a collection. And so she asks kind of, how do you know when a poem is finished? And how do you know when it becomes part of a collection?
Oh, okay. Well, I think for an individual poem, there's some kind of sense of completion. Maybe the poem has come full circle to where it started, or maybe it's gone off in a very unexpected direction where you're leaving the reader on the edge of a cliff, but maybe that's where you want to end it. And sometimes I don't know when a poem is finished. Sometimes I don't know until somebody else reads it and says, you don't need that last stanza. And then I read it again and I think they're right. I don't need that stanza. Why did I put that there? Or, maybe your first stanza is nothing but throat clearing. You're just going, and then you start the poem. And so, sometimes I don't know until I share my work with other people. And when it's a collection, well, that's really tricky, and I think you would need to start with at least 70 or 80 pages, and whittle it down. If you had 100 pages and whittled it down, that would be a good way to go because you're going to have some poems that naturally seem to work together, and then you're going to have some that don't. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think so. I like Maureen let us know that she has heard that a poem is done when it kicks you out.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Maureen.
And Paul notes that your new book is like a mountain road. One never knows what is around the curve up ahead, and Paul would know because
Paul would know.
he's always going around curves.
Paul likes to take me on car trips where we have no idea where we're going. We just drive around the mountains, and we did that last night. So yeah.
Well, this has just been wonderful, and I think you've gotten some really good responses and questions, and we still have a little more time. If anybody has a pressing question you want to ask, feel free to unmute or drop a note in the chat. And again, I am recording this, and I will try to post the recording on YouTube if I can manage it.
You'll figure it out.
I'm going to figure it out.
And I just, before we go, I want to say thank you to everybody who's here, today. It means a lot to me that you all showed up, and yeah, thanks so much.
You know what? Sherry would like you to read a few more poems.
Oh,
And we do have time, so
okay.
yeah. If you want to read another one from that one or another book?
I'll read some more from this one because I think there's some that are sort of maybe a little bit. I want to read a Phoenix poem.
Yeah.
Phoenix was my dog, and he was a treeing Walker Coonhound, and he paced around. He peed all over my house, but I loved him. And so in this poem, I'm comparing the process of housebreaking Phoenix with dating. Housebreaking Phoenix. With dogs, it's the same as with men. I fall in love too soon. While walking Phoenix in the snow, I pray for one thing, that he'll pee so we can go inside where it's warm. But all he wants is to pull me on the leash as he pursues the scent of something I can't see in the pre-dawn dark. Pee, I plead. Phoenix, please. Of course, he doesn't understand a word I say. I lead him to places he's peed before. A tree, a post, a propane tank in the backyard. But he doggedly trots down the hill. It's slick, and I forgot to put ice cleats on my boots. If he'll just do this one thing, I'll love him forever. It's kind of like wanting a man to comfort you when your feelings are hurt and act like peeing. You'd think he'd know how to do without you having to tromp around in circles in the cold, pleading for what seems like hours. Hold me, love me. Pee, Phoenix, pee. Yesterday, my sister said Phoenix's name should be P. Nix. And we laughed like we joked about the guy I dated who dressed in a gorilla suit. and the Elvis impersonator on a dating site who typed, hello, 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 like an echo instead of something funny like I'm all shook up or shake, rattle, and roll. And the poet who said I might be the one and called me his skinny 70-year-old mountain girl. I said, that sounds like Granny Clampett. And he said, more like an aging Ellie Mae, digging that damn ditch deeper each time he opened his pie hole. Phoenix plows ahead, daring me to release the leash and let him run into the woods. But if I do, he'll follow his nose and never come home. That's how it is in the push-pull of love. First, he'll tug you down the road, and later, when you think it's time to go out again, he'll stand like a statue in the doorway, framed in falling snow, refusing to budge. I bribe him with a biscuit. It's puppy love.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. One more?
Okay, maybe one a little more serious than that one.
Well,
As I drive home, you want me to read that one? Okay.
family.
Yeah, this is a family one. As I drive home, I hear my mother's voice. Your father comes alive in the mountains, and his love of thin air is in my blood, of the new river, which isn't new, but one of the oldest rivers on earth, flowing north instead of south, as if we could turn back time, of my life, which will never be a flat line, of the peaks and valleys in my pulse, of highways that curve and coil like ammonites, and ears that pop as the car rounds the ridge towards Boone, past trees my father knew, birch, sycamore, shagbark hickory, and the black locust he cut with a chainsaw for the base of a log cabin he built in Tennessee. How he'd leave every chance he got and hightail it for the hills where his heart was and where mine now beats, sometimes fluttering inside my rib cage like a canary as his did, fibrillating as if he sensed a cave collapse, like his father when he crawled from a coal mine shaft into daylight to marry my grandmother. Of how this journey is both the history of my family and the geography of the Appalachians, of split rail fences, of rhododendrons, and the Jesus Blood Saves Cross on Route 88, past the turn to Lisa's house, of bluegrass and steel string guitars, of grits, barbecue, and Mountain Dew, of quilts sewn from seed sacks, of waterfalls and kayaks, of holiness churches, of blue beehives and sourwood honey, of ditch daisies on this road gouged through rock. And that poem, by the way, is all one long sentence.
Well, thank you so much, Beth, for sharing these beautiful poems with us.
Thank you, sis. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your afternoon to join us. And I was going to put the link in the chat for the purchase of this book, and I forgot to do it, but I'm gonna try to do that now. So any last, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Okay. Keep talking.
Okay, well, where did we go?
I'll find you again. So I was
Okay.
trying to find, where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay. So I will try to put this link to the book in the chat, and if I can find my way back. All right, here we are.
There we are.
Here's where you can order the book if you haven't. Oh, sorry, it went only to one person. All right, let's try that again. Everyone. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Becky.
Yeah. So we will conclude now. I will stop the recording and uh, feel free to linger a little bit, or I know you're all busy, so and we'll stop. You want to stop recording to the